Welcome to the 2023 Zoom meet and greet for June 28th. Today we're going to be talking about three ports: Casablanca, Tangier, and Malaga. So with that, let's get started. Our first port will be Casablanca, and this is going to be our second Moroccan port. We'll have a total of three Moroccan ports: Agadir, Casablanca, and Tangier. This will be the second one. Here's the geography. You can see Casablanca is on the northwestern coast of Africa, about 200 miles south-southwest of Gibraltar. We'll be there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on April 6th, and this will be in Ramadan, so that'll impact our daily sort of eating activities. Other than that, won't be much impact, but more on that later on. Sunsets at 6:53 is when the Muslims can break their fast, and so that's will be gone or leaving right when that happens anyway. We'll be in an industrial port. You can walk out of it. During my research, some people have walked out of it. Other people have taken shuttle bus. Other bloggers from Hal Cruises say they had to pay, like in some cases it's free. Other times you pay like €5 to take a shuttle bus down to the Hyatt Regency Hotel, United Nations Square. So be ready for either option on that one there. But it's not that far. It may be a mile or so to where the shuttle bus will drop you off. Taxis are widely available. There's a couple of kinds. There's what they call the Grand Taxi, which is Mercedes types, more spruced up cars, and they run on more fixed routes, almost like a little miniature bus where they'll go from like a hotel to the airport, or so on and so forth. So we probably won't have much to do with those. Then what they call the petite taxis. They're a typical taxi. I have a photograph of one there in the insert. And they're color coded by the city. So in Casablanca, they're red, and in other cities, they're different colors. There's no Uber, and meters may or may not be present, but regardless, you probably want to negotiate ahead of time, because in many cases, even if you do have a meter, a lot of times when these cabbies deal with tourists, they'll try to not run the meter and just charge you a flat rate anyway, which is fine. These taxis are pretty inexpensive. For instance, if you took a taxi from the shuttle bus drop off to the mosque, it'd be like maybe $2. So really, if you're going to spend more than $5, you're probably spending a lot. So you can negotiate somewhat, but there's a certain point where you go, okay, if it's $2-3, I'm going to pay. If I should pay $1.75, I'm going to pay $3, so maybe I'm not going to worry about it too much. As opposed to, okay, and I can pay $20 for a 3-hour ride, but I'll pay maybe give them 3 or 4, so who knows. So keep that in mind. The weather should be very nice, in the low 60s. The language, of course, is Arabic, and it helps to pick up a few words to go there, because obviously people feel appreciated if you try to say a few things, hello, please, thank you, in the local language. The money there is the Moroccan dirham. It's about the same as a penny, so it's pretty easy to convert. And I would have the ship may or may not sell it. Hard to say. I'd probably say probably not. And the people when I've read about this, they say euros are more commonly accepted than dollars. So everyone should have a fistful of euros before going to Europe, of course. So you may want to start stockpiling them here so you can use some in Morocco. Then if you're going to do a lot of local transactions, if you are going to take a cab, or you are going to buy a lot of stuff at one of the markets, having local currency always gives you an advantage on pricing, because you don't have to worry about the conversion factor there. So it's that depends a lot what you're going to be buying. If you're going to take taxis and buy some local stuff with it, find an ATM and probably get a $50-100 in local currency, and you'll probably be okay with that. This money, though, probably won't be able to be sold back at places, so keep that in mind. if you do get a lot of money in advance. Safe city with normal precautions. Internet should be available in restaurants, hotels, things like that. Cell service should be normal for all your major providers. But like most cities in this part of the world, you want to bargain for everything. Unless you're like in a big department store that's sort of westernized, and then you're not. But other than that, and a good starting point is that, hey, just offer them 25% of whatever they started off with, and then work from there. And it'll take a little while, but they go back and forth with you. Photographs, again, before you stick a camera in someone's face, make sure they're okay with that. Same with shopkeepers. Before you take pictures of their store stuff, make sure they're okay with that, and be prepared to give them a dollar or a euro or whatever in advance, because it'll make things easier. Tipping is not expected, but it's always appreciated, but not a whole lot. Maybe round up to the next whole dollar or 5% or so. Ramadan. I did a little research on this, and I didn't know much about it until a couple of days ago. It's based on a lunar calendar, and it moves throughout the year. So every 10 years, it rotates through the entire calendar. It lasts about a month, and the main thing you'll see is adults fast from sunrise to sunset. Tourist restaurants will be open in hotels. Tourist restaurants like McDonald's might be open. If they have a large tourist population visiting them, then they'll probably stay open. There's no like religious law that says you got to close. It's just a matter of, hey, if there's no customers, then they're going to close. And if they're in an area with no tourists, then probably all the Muslims there are not going to visit the restaurant. Therefore, there's no reason for them to stay open. But if you're in a hotel or a McDonald's or someplace in a heavily transited tourist area, they might be open. It's okay to eat inside tour vehicles on your buses during the day, but from what I've read, it's a good idea not to, sort of flaunt your water or your food out in public. Don't sit down there at a picnic bench and maybe munch down your Big Mac or whatever. So it's you can eat. They say exercise some discretion if you're eating in public between the hours and between sunrise and sunset. And tours should not be affected. If a meal is included on your tour, then it should go off as planned, because they say the local people don't expect Westerners to participate in fasting. Things to see in Casablanca. There's a big mosque, I think like the third largest in some geographic area. There's the French Medina, or the Quarter Habos. Is a short walk from the shuttle bus stop, and that's the area of old sort of French architecture, some shops and things like that. There's the Morocco Mall, which is a modern Western style mall, which is a couple miles away, so you probably want to take a taxi if you want to go there, but it looks like a very modern Western mall. So unless you have some reason to go there, you're probably not going to find anything too interesting that you wouldn't find anywhere else outside of Casablanca. There's the old Medina of Casablanca, the Corniche, which is along the seafront west of town. And I'll show you in a map here in a second where these things are located. And then there's a museum, which is sort of near the shuttle bus stop downtown. So here's a chart map that shows you those spots I talked about. There is the pier where the ship will moor, and it's maybe a mile, to give you some sense of the scale, it's maybe a mile from the ship to the shuttle bus stop where the Red Star is. So it's not that far, and I've seen there's videos online where people have walked out of the port, and it doesn't look too crazy, so they may let us do it, or they may offer a shuttle bus, or they may require a shuttle bus. Hard to say how that's going to play out. But there's the Red Star, is sort of the Hyatt Hotel with the United Nations Square. Central Market is a short distance away, and that's a typical, Arab souk kind of an operation there. A lot of shops, a lot of restaurants, but unfortunately most of those will be closed, and that'd be worthwhile to walk around inside that. There's the mosque there. You could walk, it's maybe a mile or so to the mosque. Don't know exactly what kind of streets are between here and the mosque, whether you feel safe walking in that part of the town or not, I don't know. So you may be better off taking a taxi. To the west here, where it says Morocco Mall, is 5 miles from the ship. And then right off the map here is the Corniche, where you can walk along this waterfront there, and there's Western hotels there. There's the Four Seasons there, there's a McDonald's there, and places like that. The museum here is a sort of art and history museum, is close to the shuttle bus stop, maybe a quarter mile away. And then a little bit further away is the Quarter Habas, which is the old French Medina, they call it. And that's a part of town that has like older architecture and some shops and restaurants there. So there's not a lot of huge number of tourist things in Casablanca. Some people will take taxis or tours to Rabat, which is maybe 50 miles away, and there's more to see there. Rick's Cafe from the movie is here, and that gets mixed reviews. Some people say, "Oh, it's just a big ripoff. It's nothing like what's in the movie." So I would say if you're a fan of Casablanca, the movie, check out the reviews on that first and make sure it's something what you think is going to be before you carve out some of your time to go see it. It's a high-end restaurant is the main feature of it, but some people, it's one of these things on TripAdvisor. You look at the reviews, you get like a lot of 5-star reviews and a fair number of 1-star reviews, because I get people either hate it or love it. So check those out first. And let me see if I can do this here. Here we go. Okay, and then things to eat, which as I did this, I didn't realize when I put the slide together that there's not a lot of chance to eat these things during Ramadan. So this is more for historical documentation purposes. There's a central market, has 3 nice restaurants there. There's some of the food that you might find in Morocco, Casablanca. But again, during Ramadan, most of these local style restaurants, which I always try to seek out, are going to be closed more often than not. And anything that's open is going to be more of a touristy kind of a place. Hal Tours has a smattering of tours. There isn't any ho-ho bus or nothing like that. The tours here are relatively inexpensive by Hal standards, and there's a nice assortment of tours for highlights kind of tours and drive around the city tour. There's one to go to the mosque and then see the sights of tours. So there's a pretty decent selection of tours. Also, the private cars and vans are relatively inexpensive by Hal standards, if you want to rent one of those, but you probably will be able to find one in advance through Tours by Local or someone else. They'll probably give you a better value than Hal typically, but you never know. Anyway, so that concludes my discussion of Casablanca. I'd like to pause now and open up the floor to anybody who's been to Casablanca. And
it's Joe. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I have been. It's been 11 years. I do think the mosque is definitely worth going, but I'd go on a tour because it's not all open to everybody, and just that way you'll learn a lot more. But my question, and you may have mentioned this last week, and I haven't gone back to listen, but I would really like, how is the tour to Marrakesh? They say it's 4 hours each way. I think that's a little long, but I know we sat there really late one night waiting for the Marrakesh tour to get back. But has anybody thought about trying to go from Agadir and spending a couple of nights there and returning to Casablanca? I'm just curious. That was something I thought about doing.
I have not heard about anybody on Cruise Critic or Facebook talking about doing that overland. That'd be an interesting trip because it'd be pretty easy to do. You could do from that even up in Tangier. But no, Joe, to answer your question, I have not.
Hello, Pete.
Yeah.
Hello, Pete.
Yes.
Yes, we're doing a diversion, leaving Agadir and coming back at Casablanca.
Okay, good. What do you got planned?
2 nights in Marrakesh. First day, we'll tour the city. The next day, Atlas Mountains for a day, come back to Marrakesh. and then drive to Casablanca, tour that, and then we board.
Okay, well, good. Good.
Can you share the
Nope.
company that you're using?
We're using Across Africa Tours, which we're also using
Okay.
for our safari.
Are they setting up the whole thing for you from door to door?
They did. They offered door to door, but like you were talking about your deposit for your safari,
Yeah.
I found I could reduce the deposit if I had them give me a price without the lodging.
Okay.
So I went through hotels.com, put a deposit that I can then get refunded if something happens.
But they're gonna meet you at the ship and drop you off back at the ship then?
Everything else is door to door. I only
Okay,
booked
good.
the lodging. Yeah.
Good.
So anyways, just somebody asked.
And there was a question in the chat that Marty answered about walking around with a water bottle, and the answer is yes. I think Marty mentioned that as well. They say this, discretion on that stuff, but there's no problem with a water bottle out in public. Now, has anybody been to I've never been to a Muslim country during Ramadan, but I'm speaking just when I read on blogs and stuff. Has anybody been to one of these countries during Ramadan, can give us some firsthand experience about what it's like?
Pete, John Chapin here. I lived in Bahrain for a year, and we went through Ramadan. It was relatively low key for us. You noted the interruptions, the service interruptions that you would get, but in general, it didn't affect us a whole lot. So
Okay.
you had to kind of be courteous of the culture, and that helped. But services were almost always available, through the big chain hotels. You could almost always find a place to eat and get things that you needed. So they can get a little grumpy though toward the end of the day.
I guess they say it's quite too bad we're not going to be there during sunset, but they say right after sunset it can be pretty interesting to watch everyone sort of flock to these vendors that open up and all the restaurants open up, and it'd be sort of an interesting experience.
Yeah, you don't want to plan a late evening dinner. But getting back on at 7, we should be fine. So.
Okay, anything else?
Oh, a question. What is the price comparison of going through something like Across Africa Tours versus booking something through HAL? Is it dramatically less?
Yes, it's dramatically different. You typically, a private overland tour will be half the price of what HAL will charge.
At least 50%.
At least 50%.
At least 50%, if not
Yeah.
75%.
And yes, and you can sometimes do better. But typically, and like I found out on my safari trip I'm planning that I dealt direct with some of the safari lodges, and I got a discount because I said I'm not using the travel agents, so how about give me a discount? And they gave me 20% off. I want to. So.
Wow. Wow.
So if you deal direct with these hotels, then sometimes they'll cut typically they'll pay a commission to the travel agent, and if they're not paying one, then they'll sometimes share that with you or give it all to you. So something to keep in mind.
Good.
Never hurts to
And in
ask.
this case, the HAL tour is a day tour and it's a really long day. You could, but I wouldn't do that in a day with a private company just because of the risk. Although you could get to Tangier, frankly, pretty easily, but to try to do it all in a day is a lot.
Yeah, you got to weigh that risk involved because HAL tours will, the ship won't necessarily wait for you. They wait somewhat for you, but what they guarantee is they'll guarantee you either to wait or they'll get you to the next port. And you don't have to do anything. And so that's worth something. It depends on the port or how far it is to get to the next spot. It wouldn't be too hard to get to Tangier. But it'd be a hassle. It wouldn't be like easy, but you could do it. But it's not like flying to Paris or something like that.
Carry your passport with you.
Yeah.
One thing to be concerned about when we were in Casablanca before is the surf was really high coming in. And the captain was aware of it, so he got us in like 5 o'clock in the morning, and we were awake and we were underneath the Pinnacle Grill to dishes crashing on our sailing
Ooh,
because it's narrow coming in, and they have to retract the stabilizers. The crystal ship that had been following us came in during breakfast, and we heard they had broken bones. So just be aware, things could be rough going into the harbor.
Well, now, for those who've been in Casablanca, how is the city walking around? Do you feel pretty safe? Is it like a normal city? You aren't getting badgered by people, or do you feel sort of uncomfortable walking around? How does that work out?
The tourist areas are very modern. The older part of the city, it's also, I felt very safe. And I think we've been there 2 or 3 times. And every time we felt very safe.
Yeah, same thing. We were there and we felt very safe. And Marrakesh also, very safe.
and
Yes.
here's a trivia point that the Morocco was the first country to recognize United States independence, and they're very proud of that. And they feel a real affinity to the United States, different than I expected. It was the first Arab country I'd gone to, or Muslim. But anyway, so there's JFK Boulevard, and there's, Dwight Eisenhower and all that.
Okay, there's a hand raised up there in the corner. I can't make out your name there in the.
Mahiho Dainga. It's Leah.
Okay.
It's
Okay,
Leah. I have a
Leah.
Ho Chunk language class, and that's the name that's on there.
Okay.
Leah. It's Leah Ann
Leah.
Walker.
Okay.
Mahiho Dainga. So I went through a Muslim country during Ramadan, and my experience was the only negative experience I had was it felt like the tour guide was like possibly got a commission. They took us through a souk market, yeah? And that was the only time I was uncomfortable because some of the kids kind of rushed you and they were a little aggressive because the place was empty. The place was empty. And we got sort of like herded through this market, and it was a thin place. So we felt like I got kind of mad at the guy. I was like, why are we going back this way? Is there another way to go around? But the food, he took us to a restaurant and the place was empty. And it's like, well, no one else is going to be eating. So it was empty and the food was arranged just for us. So the place was empty and it was respectful aside from, we just weren't used to it. We all got uncomfortable. I don't think there was any one of us that, but, oh yeah, that was a great experience.
What city was that?
I don't remember. That was the only time I think I traveled through an Arab city during Ramadan, though. I've traveled through several, but I don't recall off the top of my head.
So John, when you were in Bahrain, were the souks closed or less visited, or was it this non-food areas? Were they sort of the same kind of crowds?
If I remember correctly, the souk was closed during business hours. But Bahrain was fairly international, so it had international shopping and a lot of hotels, and that was all available. And being resident there, they ask us to be observant and courteous of the customs. So it wasn't that wasn't really hard to live with. So it really depended on where you were. In the more traditional areas, things are going to be closed. So
Well, that's good to know. I guess you need to have a plan B, or just take a tour that's for maybe to go to places that are already open. Someone mentioned about the mosque and said it was a great visit. Did you have to have a tour to go there to some areas, or was it open pretty much to walk around on your own?
You have to buy a ticket to get into it. And I wrote down, you should visit the basement of it because that's where they bathe. They have these tremendous round things and it's very, very interesting. So I highly recommend that you see the basement of the main mosque.
And
So
we did a ship's tour, and that was included in it. But I just say take a tour.
Do we have to have head coverings or clothing as far as shoulders and knees, elbows for females? Because I know
Yes,
it's a
of
male
course.
dominant thing.
Yeah, it's of course, and you have to take off your shoes, and they give you plastic bags to put your shoes in. You can carry them around. There's rugs inside the main mosque. There's only a certain area where they permit the tourists to go. But if you buy a ticket that includes the basement, it's very interesting.
Now, Marty, do they sell those tickets like a ticket booth outside
Yes.
or online in advance or?
We bought them at a ticket booth outside the place. In fact,
Now-
opposite the main mosque, there was a secondary building, and that's where they sold the tickets.
Now, do they take only local currency, do you know, or you remember?
I assume we paid with credit card.
Okay. Was there guides available hanging around? Like sometimes a place like that, just some guys hanging around, hey, $5, I'll give you a tour. Was that?
No, but we were on a tour, and our tour guide explained us a little bit.
Okay. Okay. Were you on a ship's tour or on a private tour you arranged in advance?
Private tour. I
Okay,
don't
well,
know
good
the tour
input on that.
company
Thanks.
name, I apologize. But he took us to the spice market. He took us to the mosque, took us to the main streets. I don't recall what else.
Yeah, this one might be a good one to get a tour on because you know walking around you may not know where to go that's gonna be open or anything else, and so
And
might
it's
be-
large. It's a large city.
yeah. Okay, anything else on Casablanca? Is anybody go to Rick's Cafe? I hate to admit it, but I've never seen the movie. So I've heard of the movie, but I never watched it all the way through.
Yeah, we walked by it. It's very touristy
Yeah,
and they won't let you in to take pictures. The only way you can get inside if you have a reservation.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
of
very
course,
expensive.
it's not where the movie was shot. The movie was shot in
No,
Hollywood.
no, yeah.
So it's just some entrepreneur
just-
who said, oh, I'll put this name out
I know,
there.
yeah,
All the
that's
American
why-
tourists will come see it.
Yeah,
I-
You can
I-
buy it, you know.
If you're a fan of the movie, you probably already know all this stuff already. So
If you're a fan of the movie, you'll know it's not the real thing. You probably don't want to
right.
go.
exactly.
I don't know. I don't even think there is a real place called Rick's Cafe. Is there? I mean, it's all I think just a
No.
movie set, wasn't it, when he made the thing?
Exactly.
So anyway. Okay, I will then pause here and we'll shift over to Judy, who will be doing our next port, Tangier.
Okay, I'm going to talk about our last place in Morocco, which is Tangier. We're going to be there on Friday, April 7th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And if we look at this map first, we can see this little red dot right there is where Tangier is located. It's on the convergent point between the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. And of course, Gibraltar is just right across the water. Looking at this picture here, this gives us an idea of what the port of Tangier looks like. And in the map I have over here, you can see where there's two possibilities where we might be docked. And either possibility is about 20-minute walk into the city area. There's no shuttle provided by the city that I could find. What it said was that if there were to be a shuttle, it would have to be Hal setting it up. So we would just have to wait and see if that was going to happen. There will be taxis available though, and those taxis would cost about €5. There may be some money changing facilities somewhere along there, but there really isn't any kind of other amenities that you would expect at a port. Okay, now I can, thanks to Pete, skip all the way down here to where I've got the car. He already mentioned all that information. Driving, I'm just going to say a quick word about this. I read time after time that it can be very daunting to drive there, but if you were to choose to do so, you should definitely pre-book online because there may be a language barrier if you were to try and book it at a local place. So just keep that in mind. Okay, Pete also talked a little bit about the taxis. I will say that the taxis in Tangier are blue or ultramarine with a yellow stripe. The petite ones hold 3 passengers and the grand taxis hold 6. And what I did read was that you can flag them down if they have empty seats. So you don't have to assume that they won't stop for you if there are empty seats. The limited public transportation, but there is a hop-on, hop-off bus that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. I have a whole list of dishes here that you might want to try if you can find a place that is open. Again, because of Ramadan, I was really not sure of what places would or would not be open. Most of these restaurants that I have listed here are considered tourist type places. So they may be open. Couple of them, like the Cafe Baba and the Cafe Hafa, have a long history as being one of the hangouts for some of the local artists and international artists in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Again, I'm not sure what's going to be open for shopping, but there is a city mall that's a more westernized place. And then there is the Grand Soko or souk. Soko is a word that they use there. And it's in a place called the Place du Grand 9, April 1947. Again, I'm not sure what there is going to be available. And then, as Pete mentioned, normal safety precautions. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right, now before I go into some of the things that we can look at, I just want to kind of orient you to this map. Underneath these pictures up here would be where the ships were going to be docked. If you wanted to do the hop-on, hop-off bus, then this red arrow right here is showing you where the kiosk would be for that. As far as I could find out, there's nothing at the port, but you'd have to get yourself over to here. And this is also the first stop on the hop-on, hop-off bus. These 3 blue arrows that I have here that I'm pointing to are 3 main entrances into the Medina area, which is this pinkish area. And then the Kasbah, which is the fort, is up kind of in this corner. So if this is where you wanted to go, you would probably want to go in this door. It looks nice and flat on the map, but of course it isn't. And so if you wanted to go up to the Kasbah, but you didn't want a whole lot of uphill walking, then I read that this is the entrance that's suggested that you go in here. And then apparently it's quicker to go here unless you want to take a taxi over to this one. So those are the basic entrances. Now, up in the Kasbah area, there's a couple of things to take a look at. Again, I couldn't find if these are going to be open or closed, but I'm going to tell you about them anyway. There's the Museum of the Kasbah, that's a 17th century Sultan palace. In there, there are Moroccan artworks and artifacts. It costs about 20 MAD to enter, which would be about $2. Right near there is the contemporary art space, which has rotating kind of artworks there. You can come down here to number 3 and notice that the mosque is right near one of the entrances. And here's a picture of the mosque up here, the Grand Mosque. It's the main mosque of Tangier. It was founded in the 17th century. Non-Muslims can only view the outside. And it's a very beautiful kind of modern architecture. It can also be seen from the port and then from other places within the Medina. Now, down here at number 4 is a very interesting museum. Joe kind of made a comment earlier on that reminded me of this museum. It's called the American Legation Museum. And it's the first American public property that was built outside of the United States. And it was first founded in 1821. And it commemorates the historic relationship between the United States and Morocco. So very important to those people and to us also, I guess. Not only is the building beautiful, as you can see, but There's a museum and cultural center inside. 20 MAD, or about $2 to enter it. It's also been made a National Historic Site for the US abroad, and that happened in 1982. So I think that would be one suggestion, if you could, to go and take a look in that museum. Hopefully it'll be open. Number 5 is a market right over here, mainly foodstuffs and that kind of thing. Number 6, if you're interested in visiting religious places, this is the Mashinahun Synagogue, which is one of the most beautiful interiors in Morocco. Was built in 1870s and it was renovated in 1994. It's down this path. This is where it is, way down there, the door. From what I've read, you have to find the attendant to let you in, because normally they have the doors closed. So if you run into it as you're walking around the Medina, you might want to take a look at that. All right, one of the main places is this place number 7 right here. Here's a picture of it. It's called the Place du April 9, 1947, or the Grand Sokol, or the Grand Mosque. All 3 of those are names for it. It was named after a speech that was given on April 9th, 1947, in support of independence for Morocco. It's kind of the point between the Medina, the old city, and the newer city. And there is also an entrance to the Medina in this area. If there were a shuttle, this would be actually the perfect place for it to go, because you could go right into the Medina or to other places around. Now, a couple places outside of the Medina, I want to mention number 8 over here, which is the Manubia Gardens. Here you can get views of the port. There's an 800-year-old banyan tree and about 30 bronze ship canyons throughout the park. There also looks like there'd be some nice pleasant places to just sit and relax. Last thing I want to mention here is St. Andrew's Church. This church was consecrated in 1905, and there's many historical figures of Morocco that are buried here. And the reason that I mentioned this to you is that one of the HAL tours does stop here. So I thought it would be good to have a little information about it. All right, what else to do while we're here? All right, now here is the port area and the Medina. And then about 15 kilometers from the city center are these 2 sites right here. The first one is Cape Spartel, which is an overlook with a very beautiful lighthouse. It's considered one of the top attractions in Tangier. It's the most northwest point of mainland Africa, and you get nice views across the Strait of Gibraltar. Another place in this area that can be visited is down right here, just a little couple kilometers from the Cape, and that's called the Caves of Hercules. Legend has it that when Hercules was busy doing his 12 labors, when he was looking for the apples, he spent the night here. So we'll see, maybe, maybe not. Part of it's natural, part of it is man-made. The man-made part was done by Berber people who were cutting stone wheels from the walls. So you can go into this area, you can see the man-made part, you can see the natural part. All right, a quick mention about the hop-on, hop-off buses. There are 2 different routes. There's the historical tour, which is the blue route. It lasts, oops, good grief. Okay, back up, sorry about that. It goes every 30 minutes and lasts about an hour. And again, I'm going to point out number 2, if this is where you would want to get off to go into the Medina, if that's what you wanted to do on the hop-on, hop-off bus. The other route is the red route. It's called the Esparto Tour. It lasts about an hour and 40 minutes if you do it round trip. And there's only 3 departures for this one, 12, 2, and 4. You can get tickets in the kiosk in town. You can go to this website I have at the bottom, or Viator also will sell you tickets. Now, there's many beautiful places within the Tangiers area, but I'm going to mention these two because Hal has tours to both of them. So I thought you might want a little bit of information to help make a choice. The first one here is Tetuan, which is dubbed the White Dove because of the white buildings. It's the Medina there is very small, but it's very complete, as they say, and it was made a UNESCO World Site. So I'm sure the tour will go there. And then there's also an archaeological museum. I want to mention this seaside city, Aslia, which was a former Portuguese colony, an art hub. And the Medina here is supposed to be very beautiful. It's been called one big art gallery because there are apparently many murals painted along the walls in the Medina. All right, now quickly, there are a few Hal tours to take. Here's the one I was talking about, Aslia. It also takes you to the Cape, to the lighthouse. This one might be an interesting one for foodies. It's a small one, a maximum of 12 people. You're going to go to the Grand Soko. Hopefully it's open. You're going to learn to make tea and make bread, and then you're going to eat what you've made. Here's one that's a full day that goes to both Tangier and Tetuan. Here's one that just takes you to the UNESCO sites in Tetuan. So this would be the one where you would definitely get to see the Medina. And then this one has very many of the things that I mentioned that you could take a look at on that highlights tour. Now, I wanted to mention these because I had not seen these in the book on any other city, but we know that they will rent private vans or for half day, full day, and then you make your own itinerary. But these actually have an already made itinerary that you can book. So each one of them lasts 8.5 hours, and it says, please call for pricing. So you can believe they're not going to be cheap. But if any of them are of interest, it wouldn't hurt to give Hal a call and see what they're charging. One last quick thing I want to mention, I found this website called walkie.com. And what you can do is you can put in a city, and if someone has made up like a walking tour of that city, you can download the information. Now, it's not a real-time application like a map, but as you go to each of the places, they will have emailed you information about each of the places along the tour. This particular walking tour is a little bit less than 1.75 miles. So I thought this might be of interest to some people. Okay, so that's it for Tangier. Hopefully someone has been there and can kind of give us some clues about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Judy, for an outstanding presentation. I'd like to pause now and open the floor up to anybody who's been to Tangier or has any other comments or questions.
And 11 years ago, and we did a tour that was like that Hal tour that sort of did a little of everything. And it was interesting and a good way to get around the souk. I mean, it wasn't Ramadan, so, but as I recall, because we were of course on a bus because we went to Cap Spartel and to Hercules Caves and all that, where you can ride a camel if you want. But when we finished up at the souk, and of course our guides who walked us through rather quickly, and they had probably their cousin's little shop they wanted us all to get to. And I was lagging and they didn't like that, trying to take some pictures. But when we ended, we could walk back to the ship. So it was downhill going back, but it wasn't that far. And I was with my mother and we didn't walk long distances. So, you know, I think that's definitely doable if you'd like to walk, but it wasn't miles or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. Were you there on a ship, Joe, or were you just there on your land tour?
No, I was there on the ship. It was the 2011 Atlantic Adventure, which was Fort Lauderdale to Rome and back, 45 days
So
on
so
Hal,
those,
Mazdam.
do you remember either, I guess, Marty or Joe, did they sell local currency at the front desk for this port? Do you remember that?
I don't remember. I think we didn't really get any because we were just on the tour and we weren't very sophisticated about that kind of thing then. And we had earlier in the cruise been to Casablanca, but I don't even think we got it there. I don't remember. So
I don't recall if the front desk sold currency. I think I got, let's just like you say, Pete, $100 here in the US, paid a prime price. And after that, use a debit card and got more money out of an ATM. Gail and I went to Fez. We left Casablanca once and did an overland. We drove to Fez. We stayed in the Medina overnight, and then drove back to a different port. That was fun.
Did you drive yourself, Marty?
Oh no. No.
Okay, anybody else with comments or questions about Tangier or Morocco as we're getting ready to leave Morocco on our little windshield tour here? Okay, now we'll move on to Ellen, who's going to take us to Europe and the port of Malaga. So Ellen,
Hello.
over to you.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So this is our first European port. We will be there on Saturday, April 8th. We'll be docked. It's not a tender port. We'll have a very full day there from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. I listed a few websites that you can go to get more touristy information. There's Lonely Planet, and then there was one that was specific for Malaga. And then Get Your Guide, that's another generic website that has information on a lot of cities. The temperature will be nice, between 52 and 71. It'll probably be about 62, and very little rain in April. That's a good thing. We're starting with Euros this time. First country that has Euros there, ATM, no visa, safety precautions and clothing are normal. One of the things I found interesting is that there's free Wi-Fi at newsstands. There's about 50 newspaper stands. I haven't even seen one in many years, but there's Wi-Fi at them there. They do say that they have a slow connection, but if you're in a pinch, you can use that or go to any fast food restaurant. You should be able to get Wi-Fi. 4G is widely available, and even some 5G coverage by Orange. So if you want to use your cell phone, you'll have the ability. Taxis are available. There are meters, they're supposed to be there, but they're not always metered. So make sure you verify the cost with the driver before you get in. The rates should be displayed inside the licensed taxis. I didn't see any kind of Uber there. And I think someone else mentioned that you could see about, if there's a sign on it that says whether or not it's free. So in Spanish, it's libre. So if there's a green libre notice on the windscreen, then it's available for you. Also, any bar or restaurant will call a taxi to get back to you. There's a couple of buses. The Port Authority of Malaga should have a shuttle bus from the cruise terminal to the main plaza, the Plaza de la Marina in the city center. They said it runs every 15 to 20 minutes and it's about €5 each way per person. So I think if you get a cab for a couple of people, it's probably cheaper. There's a solar bus, which I'll show you a picture of, which is for €3. And then the Ho-Ho. When I first looked at the Ho-Ho, there was only one route and 14 stops. And I just looked again and there's 3 routes now. I think when I was doing this presentation, it was more during COVID time, so they probably limited it. But anyway, there's many websites available. There's city sightseeing, there was like Ho-Ho, Viator, but I just listed one of them here. And it's very close to where the cruise ship shuttle will drop you off. And then there's a bus, a regular bus called Empresa Municipal de Transportes if you want to do just regular buses. And of course, cruise car rentals, with 2 car rentals right near the terminal. If you're adventurous and feel like driving there. Malaga is the capital of the province. It's the 5th most populated city in Spain. The city is down here, and the reason I'm showing this large photo is a lot of people want to go to the Alhambra, which is up here. So you can see that there's a couple of different routes. It's about an hour and a half to 2 hours to get up there. There is availability on how tours to go to Alhambra. The cruise terminal is will probably be docked at Eastern Dock. It's pier number 1. The walk to the main center is about 1.5 miles. You could probably just do that shuttle bus if you want. If you want to go to the beach, it says to walk to a lighthouse. It's about 700 feet from the dock, so you should be able to see it. I put this little blurb in here about hand luggage because I know some people like to bring beverages that may not be allowed by HAL on cruise ships to bring onto HAL. So the hand luggage is checked by port authorities in this port, not when you board the ship. So this, if you're interested in bringing an additional beverage, this may be a port you want to use to bring it on the ship. And conveniently, there's a duty-free shop in the terminal with alcoholic beverages. But I'm not telling you should do. I'm just saying if you want to, there's possibilities here. Okay, shopping. The shops are usually open Monday through Saturday and from 9:30 to 1:30, and then they take a siesta for a few hours and open again from 4:30 to 8. The big shopping centers will be open the majority of the day from 10 to 9. There's a lot of good shopping in the historical quarter, which is the largest commercial area in the city. There's most of the museums and monuments and attractions are there, so it's a pretty good area to walk around. The whole area is a big semicircle that extends, and I'll show you a map, out from its central access at Calle Lada. Well, you could read it. I don't have to go through all, to the bank of the river and back. So this is the main area. So the cruise terminal will be down here. This is the lighthouse where I said if you wanted to go to the beach, you could walk to this lighthouse. And here's the beach, Playa de Malagueta, I think. And here's the main, where the shuttle bus will take you to, Plaza de la Marina. The historical district is in here, this area here, which is like a pale yellow. A nice church is Our Lady of Incarnation. There's the museum, there's Alcazaba, and the Picasso Museum. So all this is very, very, very walkable. Like I said, it's about 1.5 miles from the cruise terminal down here. You have to walk all the way up to get to the Picasso Museum. So you can see that this is a fairly compact area and very walkable. Okay, Alhambra. This is a UNESCO World Site, Heritage Site. It's in Granada. As I mentioned, it's about 2 hours from Malaga. It's a palace and a fortress that was originally constructed in 889 CE on the remains of an ancient Roman fortification. It was rebuilt in the mid-13th century by the Emirates of Granada, who has a very long name, Arab Nasrid Emir Mohammed bin al-Ahmad. Then it was converted to a palace in 1333 by a Sultan of Granada, and then finally it became the royal court of Ferdinand and Isabella in 1492. This is not accessible for people with wheelchairs or walkers, and you have to bring your passport for entry. There's a couple of different types of tickets, and you need to plan for a specific time because they are timed tickets. So this is a place where you might want to go with HAL, even though it's being much more expensive. You need at least 2 hours to see most of it. If you decide to do it independently, I listed where you can buy the ticket, how you can get to, you take a taxi to the central buses, you take a bus. This is the bus that you would take. You go onto this website and buy a bus ticket. What I read was the super buses are very comfortable. They have Wi-Fi, you have a reserved seat. You don't have to worry that you're going to be sitting, in the hump of the wheel or all the way in the back. You can take your seat. And then you'll need to probably take a taxi up to Alhambra. It's an uphill walk. I have a couple of pictures of what it looks like. These two I pulled from the web. This one was one I took in 1978 when I was there as a teenager, and I think that is me right there. So it's a beautiful place. Okay, so more local attractions that I mentioned that are in Malaga itself. Alcazaba is a fortune palace. It has a very nice garden. There's a local archaeological museum and sorry, let me put it. You're probably hearing a motorcycle. Be right back. Sorry about that. It has a tiered Roman theater. It was built between 1057 and 1063. Then there's Nuestra Senora de la Incarnation, so Our Lady of the Incarnation. It's an impressive Renaissance cathedral, and it's right next to an unfinished Gothic church. They said it's also unfinished, and it was built between 1530 and the 17th, and finished in the 1600s in the 17th century. There's also a castle, which is high above Alcazaba. It's a path from there all the way up. It's a pretty steep climb. They said there's an elevator to the palace, which is halfway up. And there's an interesting military museum and spectacular views of the city from there. So when Peter and I went to Malaga, Cal offered this tour. It was called Caminito del Rey. It's King's Little Path. It's a cliffside path hanging about 100 meters above a river on the way to a reservoir. It's about 25 kilometers from Malaga. I did not see that Hal had offered it again. It was fantastic to experience. This is the old path, and you can see it's quite falling down. And I wouldn't want to walk on that, but this is the new one. Me and Peter. Takes about 2 hours. It's 2 miles. It's mostly flat, but there are quite a few stairs. It would be really cool if Hal offered this one again. I would do it again. Also local to Malaga is the Picasso Museum and the Count Buena is the Palace. So both of them are in that downtown historical district that I mentioned. The Picasso Museum includes some of the most valuable collections of his work. The Carmen Saisi Museum covers Romanticism and costumism. I don't know what that is, from the 19th century. There's a Glass and Crystal Museum, which is in an old restored townhouse, and there's a treasure chest of interesting glass artifacts. And finally, the Contemporary Art Center is in a former market with modern art exhibitions. This is a list of a lot of the private tours that I found. So there's tours by locals that a lot of people use, VIP tours, Spain day tours. I did some last World Cruise with Spain day tours. There's a private Alhambra tour you can use. This is the Caminito del Rey. I thought some of the bike tours and Segway tours, there's even electric bikes. I thought that might be interesting for some people. And then lastly, this is the official tourist guide down here. And you could get these presentations from Pete, so you don't have to scribble down all the website. And then Hal had a long list of tours ranging from like $70 all the way up to I think $200, something like that. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is the Granada and the Alhambra tour. It's a 9-hour tour because they say it takes 2.5 hours to drive to Granada. You'll visit both the Alhambra, the Nazaré Passage, and then the General Life, the summer residence, and the gardens. I guess there's a different kinds of tickets that you can buy for the Alhambra. This tour includes lunch, and they say that you need to be able to walk over uneven surfaces with 150 steps throughout the Alhambra. And they don't do any refunds or exchanges on the Hal tour. Another option is to do Granada on your own. They offer just a bus tour. They drive the bus there and then let you free for 5 hours, and then you catch the bus back. Okay, so here's some more of their tours. Like I said, most of them are $70 on up to $200. And lastly, of course, the most expensive ones are the private car rentals. So that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Ellen, for a outstanding presentation. I'd like to pause now, open the floor up to anybody who's been to Malaga or has any questions or comments.
I have, I've been to, can you hear me? Guess not.
Yes.
I've been to Alhambra a couple of times, and I don't know if this might even ground, but very, very high steps that my mother couldn't do it because they were, you know, like twice as high as regular steps. And it really takes a lot of effort to get up these steps when there's like 15 of them or so. So, you know, even if you think you can walk on uneven pavement, make sure you can go up and down big steps.
Good to know.
Thank you for that.
One of their photo ops is that it was featured in Game of Thrones.
Oh,
Yeah, beautiful.
Okay, anything else? One aside on Euros, I just recalled that Reunion Island, I think we're going to visit on this cruise, that also is Euros. And so there's a chance there to probably get Euros out of an ATM and a potentially favorable exchange rate. I don't know, but that's a possibility to think about. If you want to get a bunch of Euros, you might be able to do it at Reunion Island. I think they're all Euro based there.
I'm actually considering buying some now. It's like at a record low. I went
Yeah,
on
that's
Etsy.com, and I had done this presentation a while ago, and it was like, I think it was $1.15 or something per euro. And I looked today and it's $1.05. So
yeah, that's a good,
wow.
that's a good idea, Ellen. That really, you're certainly Euros are always gonna be something you can use. And at that exchange rate, even it'll pay for itself in terms of a favorable exchange rate, which I say probably is going to get worse over time. Hard to say.
Just a comment. I bought some euros this past week at the currency exchange, and it was 105. And if you happen to be a veteran or so on, there's a discount on the fee for veterans and armed forces.
Was that a website, currency exchange?
No, it's these little kiosks that you find in some of the malls.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
For us, it's in the Tyson's Corner Mall in Virginia.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar. I used to have a Travelex here in San Diego, Ellen. I haven't seen them. I think they're all out of business now.
So the last one I saw, there was one at Fashion Valley, across from the Nordstrom's, Jim, at the lower level of the Nordstrom. I think that one's gone. But there was also one in Mission Valley, kind of near the mall. I mean, and at the mall near the movie theater and the chess set. It was a kiosk in the middle. And I haven't gone in quite some time, but that's the last one. That was the last one I saw around. Because UTC is gone. But I think Mission Valley was the last one that had one.
Well, there's probably nothing in the middle of Florida.
I guess AAA, I think, sells currency, and I think Wells Fargo does.
Wells Fargo
bank does.
Yeah, we have local banks that do it. We bank with USAA, but that's a long drive from Orlando to, you know, San Antonio just to buy euros. So
will they do it over the mail? Will they mail you? Will USAA do it by mail?
You know, I don't know if they'll mail them or not. I've never tried. I'm sure the exchange rate probably isn't any more favorable. I do know that if you have a USAA debit card, they refund all of your ATM transaction fees. And there's no foreign exchange transaction fees. So we'll probably end up getting, you know, we'll take a small stash with us and then we'll end up doing the ATM, you know.
So right now, Wells Fargo has euros for $1, 1.1145, so a little higher than what the website actually has.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do SunTrust here, Truist. Okay.
Huh.
Hey, thank you. That was really, that was very informative. We were just at the Alhambra the end of April, maybe middle end of April. We did a transatlantic and then a Mediterranean back to back. And we really loved it. We did go on a HAL tour. And the only bad experience with that was that the guide went, we must have been late for our time because the guide went leaping off the bus and left everybody at the bus. I mean, if you were in the first 3 rows, you were running like hell down the path to catch up with him. And he literally left one lady at the bus. One older lady went, put her sweater back on her seat, and we were all gone when she got back off. She spent 2 hours sitting there with the bus driver. It was really bad, but other than, if as long as he's not your tour guide, you'll be fine, huh? And the crowds were huge. There were tons of people. You could barely see anything unless you elbowed your way to the front. But it was still worth it. Yeah, we liked it a lot. All right, I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay, then that will wrap it up. In July 12th will be our next call where we'll talk about Cadiz, Lisbon, and A Coruña. I've never heard of that city till now. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly or not. But anyway, those are our 3 ports for July 12th Zoom at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So until then, have a wonderful day.
Nice.